Good evening, and good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains, episode number 1055, 1055 for April the 6th, 2026. And if you've just joined us looking for the actual show content, move the slider over about 8 minutes. But hey, you might miss something here. This is the pre show. You know the deal. It's the magical, marvelous part of this program where we typically do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we say some pretty outrageous things. So yeah, and this is the part that doesn't get on the audio show that goes out to the world. This is just for those that have the guts to watch the YouTube version here. So welcome, 1055, April the 6th. We are deep into spring, and it tends to be a time where the weather can be pretty crazy. And it's actually amazingly calm for the moment. Looks like it's going to heat up in about 5 or 6 days. Looks like a very active stretch of days for the southern plains, maybe North Texas, West Texas, this weekend and into next week. But where we are down here, this is typically when it gets nasty. Goodness gracious. On this date in weather history, we had the great Tupelo tornado and the Gainesville, Georgia tornado that were just absolutely incredible. The death toll, I think, in that outbreak was over 450. And this was April the 6th of 1936, April 5th and 6th, that 2-day stretch. Yeah, the death toll was 454. Pretty remarkable. And of course, the very, very young Elvis Presley was awfully close to that thing. So we can have some pretty nasty weather this time of the year, but it's actually looking kind of quiet. In fact, we shot a story Saturday on the April 8th, 1998 F5 that came through the western part of Birmingham. One of the survivors, who was lofted, by the way, is Matthew Seals. Matthew's 8-year-old son was killed tragically. And we went back out to that part of town and shot a pretty long interview with Matthew. And it's been 28 years, which is crazy. But we're going to run that on our network here beginning Wednesday. Wednesday is the anniversary date, April the 8th. But that was a night where 34 died in the Birmingham metro. We had 2 more deaths east of here. But that was a very, very rough F5 tornado. But again, we're calm right now. So let's bring in some guests. I know that we got Rick Smith, who is traveling, and he will not be able to join us tonight. Like the WeatherBrains text thread has been very active today. But yeah, Rick will not be able to join us. I think everybody else will be able to join us. All right, Brian, can you hear us okay?
Hey, James, I can hear you good. How's it sound on my end?
Audio good, video clean. Mike, can you hear us?
Hey, James. Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we're good. Um, so we actually could start whenever we want to. For years, they took this on a local television station group, not on the main channels, but the dot threes, dot fours, whatever. And they hubbed out master control a few months ago, and it's somewhere. I think it's in Cleveland or somewhere. But anyway, they say they can't put it on the dot threes or dot fours, so we don't have to go on at the top of the hour anymore. So we can start whenever we want, but we'll wait on everybody else to show up here. But thank you guys for your time. I'm so sorry. I know y'all are busy. Thank you.
We're actually getting some storms here, ironically, so that's pretty good this evening. We need the rain.
Hey, yeah, man. I don't like the way it's setting up here. I do not like it. Traditionally, this is our wet season, and it just looks dry as a bone. And we've got about 77% of Alabama in a drought now, which is not good for mid-April. And if you go into summer with a drought, it can be nasty, nasty, nasty. Heat, drought. It just I don't like it. So I'm
Routes are
thankful
boring.
you're getting some rain. Um, Yeah, in fact, let me throw the radar down there. I've been We had about a half inch to 1 inch this weekend here, which was certainly not sufficient for us. But we'll take it. Whatever we get, we can take.
Rain's closer to your house, Brian.
I know it's good. I need it on the grass. It's more northeast of me too, but yeah, we'll see what we get, especially the next couple days, tomorrow morning maybe.
Years and
It
years
does
ago,
look
I was
pretty.
watching the Weather Channel. I was a young kid, and John Hope was on. We all remember John Hope. And he made a comment that people don't realize how bad the droughts can be in Florida. That when he lived in Miami, it was really difficult sometimes keeping a lawn. And I just assume, I'm just like young teens. And I was like, I just thought it rained there all the time. Tropical paradise. He was right.
Those are some pretty healthy storms. Wow, very nice. Um, all right, we're slowly getting everybody online here. Um, I see Jen. Jen, where where you at? Where you at?
I'm in Ohio. I made my way big circle, 3 months on the road, and now I'm back up at my mom's house. Be
Okay.
here for about 6 weeks.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice to be home.
Yeah, I missed everybody. It was good to be here for Easter, and I'll be here through Mother's Day at least, so that'll be good.
Gosh, Mother's Day is coming up.
I know.
Scary. Where
It
is
is
this year
flying.
going?
I'm telling you.
Gosh. Wow. But we were talking about the Tupelo, Gainesville tornadoes, the anniversary going on right now. So you know more about those events than anybody else on this show.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
telling you, that was one of the 2 day total fatalities, almost 500 people. It's just an awful event, and the Gainesville one was awful because they had the place that the business that was hit, and then there was a fire that was after. So it was just awful. So I want to do a lot more research on those events as I'm out and about.
yeah. What was it? A factory or something where
It
like a
was a
hundred people were
factory.
killed?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's just insane. Um,
And both, I
all
think
right. We
the total of fatalities, I think, are underestimated for both events, I think.
I
So
would
it's just
imagine
hard.
that is the case.
Yeah.
All right. So Adalot's got this show here. So I see the good doctor is on the line with us. I do not see John. Is John coming on the show tonight?
He's supposed to be, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
He was,
Well,
yeah.
let's get started. It's time. All right. Track number one and track number two. And here we go in five, four, three, two, one.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
So says Bill Curtis. We'll believe him. Weather Brains episode number 1055, 1055. This is for the 6th of April, 2026. Spring is just rolling along so fast, but we got a really good show coming up tonight here. But Jen, let's update everybody on your travels. People, inquiring minds want to know where do you happen to be this week?
I am in Ohio, so I've made it back home, and it was just a great 3 months on the road. It was quite the adventure. So many things that I'm just still processing through. It was just amazing. But now I'm back home, hanging out with the family, and going to get a chance to be here for probably another 4 to 6 weeks. There's a little bit of some uncertainty as I move into mid-May. But I'll be here certainly through Mother's Day, so I can hang out with mom and get to go to my niece's recital and those type of fun things. So I get a chance to kind of decompress and figure out the next steps.
And you need to give Kimmel a lesson on organizing books. I noticed behind you, your books are very neat and organized. Troy struggles a little bit in that area.
He does, yeah. That would be my mom's my mom's doing
Oh,
back
okay.
here.
Okay.
So
Well, mom has done a very good job.
yeah.
So let's see. I got Kim on the line, the commissioner, the commissioner emeritus from Oklahoma. Kim, looks like you might get active, what, in 5 or 6, 7 days? Tornado
Yeah,
time?
it's sure looking like it. And if the CFS is to be believed, then that's not all. It should be, or could be, a pretty busy period starting this weekend and then going forward. So we'll take the calm that we have while we have it. It has been already. We've had a couple of really conditional severe weather events, the kind where you're looking out for the QLCS tornado and everyone's everyone's getting, they're kicking the mud off of the tires and getting all of their severe weather preparedness back in mind. So it's been good preparation for what might be some more, heavy hitting events to come.
Yeah, it just looks like everything's lining up for the stretch of active days, and you never want to be in an SPC day 6 or day 7 outlook. I know that from experience. That nothing good ever comes of that. So, John Gordon, it is so good to see you, sir. Air Gordon,
Good to see
the
you.
man of integrity, the man of passion, excitement. He demands excellence from everybody in his positions that works for him. You can learn a lot from this man if you hang out with this man.
It was great to hang out with the Eagle in Mobile, Alabama. We had a blast, right, Kim? We had a blast. I'm at a secret location, but I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm near New River Gorge National Park, West Virginia.
Ooh, yes. We note your studio looks a little different there. So,
It's really
okay.
decorated well.
Yeah, there you go.
bathroom?
So we'll dive into this a little later, but let's turn it over to James Adelot, who's going to bring in our guest, and this is going to be a good show this week. I'm excited. Go, James.
All right. We have, thanks to John Gordon's great leadership, Air Gordon himself, have decided to talk about various active weather markets in the country and bring in a TV meteorologist and some other meteorological geniuses from those markets. And we decided to pick on Tampa first. So our first guest, well, both of them, Mike Clay and Brian Lamar. Brian is a friend of the show as well, but you were with the National Weather Service in Tampa from 2007 to 2024, right? And
It is. Yeah, it's been, I was the longest serving meteorologist in charge of that office for the Tampa Bay area. And we covered the West Coast and Southwest coast of Florida. And then I retired last year, and it's been pretty exciting.
All right, let's check in with Mike Clay, a man who cannot find me a Cuban sandwich in Tampa,
Oh,
Florida.
I forgot about that.
Gosh.
What?
He was here at a conference and he wanted a Cuban sandwich, and we went to a nearby restaurant and it was off the menu. And I thought he was going to cry. And so I went back, and so they came up to the table and they said, I went back to the cook and I said, can you please? I mean, it's a Cuban sandwich. And the guy made a Cuban sandwich for James
And it
off
was
the
really
menu.
Wow.
absolutely worth it. But Mike is another Texan making an appearance on the show. And you've traveled, your TV career has traveled far and wide too. After starting in Texas, you were up in Seattle before you
Mhm.
made it down to Tampa. How long have you been at Bay News 9?
28 years now.
Oh.
It's incredible. Since day one, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Who would have
also
thought?
known for the Klystron radar and the awesome branding of Klystron 9,
Yep.
that radar, which is really very cool. Brian, we can start with you. We've already hit it on this show too, but what infected you with the weather bug?
I think it really goes back to when I was a kid many years ago. I grew up in Connecticut and also lived in Texas. So Mike and I have some interesting stories from Texas as well. But it was back in the 1978, the blizzard of 1978. I was a little kid up in Connecticut, and the thunder snow really piqued my interest and just wanted to learn more about it. But then a handful of years later, Hurricane Gloria, 1985, and my parents took my brother and I and put us in the basement, and we were kind of sheltering in place. That hurricane was moving from south to north across Long Island Sound, went into Connecticut, and we lost power. We had the old candles and kerosene lamps, the hurricane lamps that a lot of us had back then. Those two weather events really kind of piqued my interest. And when I was in high school, it was the only high school in the United States, Woket High School, that had a meteorology program. And the meteorology teacher, Mr. John Bajoni, He was phenomenal. And we had a tornado outbreak in Connecticut, July 10th, 1989. And so that we had 9 tornadoes that moved in northwest flow, that classic track across Connecticut, and a lot of severe weather. So definitely those 3 events really kind of sparked my interest and got me into college for meteorology.
And you haven't looked back since. Now, in your career, you were out at Lubbock and then to Tampa, right? So, I mean, those two culturally very similar cities, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had a lot of different shifts. So my first official office, I started at the National Weather Service office in Hartford, Connecticut. And that was while I was still in college back in 92 to 94. But that was one of the offices that were shutting down in Connecticut. But my first official job as a permanent meteorologist in the National Weather Service was in Corpus Christi, Texas. So I was there for about 8.5 years, moved up to our headquarters in DC, and then moved out to Lubbock in a position that was really exciting. It's called the WCM, or the Warning Coordination Meteorologist. And I was out there for 3 severe weather seasons, and one was 2005. If Troy's on, and I know Mike remembers, one of the most active tornado outbreaks was in 2005, second only to 1995. And so we had 2 F3 tornadoes in the Lubbock area responsibility, and it was a lot of experience doing damage surveys. But it was in 2007 when I was selected for the meteorologist in charge at the office in Tampa, and went through, as Mike knows, I've known Mike that entire time. We've had tornado outbreaks, hurricanes, fires, light snowfalls, and everything in between.
Let's pivot to Mike and get the same career trajectory. Mike, you've kicked around Central Texas a lot before you moved out of the state.
I did. I had a weird start to my career. I was a DJ like James, and I was the guy at the station that always went in when there was a weather warning. I was really into it. And my dad's partner at work, his son was the news director at KCEN in Temple. And his son, the news director, Andy Shaw, was commenting that he couldn't find anybody to do weekend weather. He would like to find a DJ or somebody he could pay. And my dad said, well, Mike enjoys the weather. And the 2 dads got together and forced Andy to give me an audition. And I went out to the TV station and auditioned and got the job.
What kind of music did you play?
Country, of course.
You play both kinds, country and Western.
Yeah. So yeah, I was in Central Texas and did some time in Seattle and been here ever since. I'm glad Troy's here because I have a good Troy story.
Oh, by all means, we'll stop.
Good to see y'all.
boy.
Good night.
You ready?
Good to see you,
We
Mike.
need to hear
Good
this.
see you,
We
Brian.
need to hear
So-
this.
Is it about his books he has behind you, Mike?
Oh,
All
that's
those books?
I went to Troy's house in the early 90s. It looked like that then, so it doesn't change. Troy had the most impressive, he had a weather wire at his house in the 80s and 90s, the old satellite with the and I remember walking in there going, this is like heaven. I mean, you could sit there. But so Troy was on the radio, Key 103, Dave Jarrett. Is that right, Troy?
That's exactly right.
And so, we didn't have all these CAMS models and stuff. We were printing maps on the
LFM.
Difex,
It was
yeah.
LFM.
LFM. Happy to get the
MRF.
GM in.
MRF.
And one of our forecast challenges, I was at the competition. One of our forecast challenges was the morning stratus coming up against the Balcones escarpment, coming up from Mexico, return flow, and it would just bite you in South Central Texas because you would expect a sunny day. You'd wake up. So everybody was forecasting a sunny day. We woke up and there's this low cloud deck and there's fog and drizzle and it's just not breaking up. And I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to the radio and Dave Jarrett comes on and he goes, well, folks, we had Troy on earlier and he said it was supposed to be a really nice sunny day, but as you can see, looking out the window, it's really cloudy and it's kind of drizzly, but we just had Troy here for an update on the forecast. And like we like to say here, if at first you don't succeed, try Troy again.
Yep, exactly. And that sounds exactly about Dave Jarrett, the way he would do it. So.
Almost drove off the road.
Yep.
So, Brian, after leaving the Weather Service, you started Inspire Weather. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a consulting company that I started right the day after I retired from the National Weather Service. So that was last April 30th last year.
Yeah.
After over about 32 years in the National Weather Service, retired and started Inspire Weather. And what I wanted to do is take what I loved most about the career with the National Weather Service over 3 decades and kind of put it into my own consulting business. And that's really been focused on outreach and education, working with media. There's been a lot of work with national media over the past almost year now, and really helping people and businesses and agencies understand, the impacts of weather, but also understand, the kind of the education behind it. How do they interpret data? And ironically, a couple months after I retired, I was out in Saudi Arabia with their version of the National Weather Service, and then consulting with UCAR out of Colorado. So the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, Kim knows them well, and was working with them on a training program with the National Center for Meteorology. That's in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And so I was over there for a couple of weeks and working with their scientists. They have full range of scientists, and really starting to develop a training program for them. And that's been pretty exciting. And so now we're kind of in phase two. We're kind of waiting because there's a lot of challenges going on in the Middle East right now. And so we're waiting, and we already got really good positive feedback from the National Center out there that they're looking forward to working with UCAR and basically understanding better how to use a lot of the newer tools for observational systems, radar, satellite, because a lot of people don't understand that area of the world does get a lot of active weather. And just a couple of weeks ago, right, where they had tornadoes and water spouts and large mesoscale convective systems that were moving across Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Dubai. And so this is their wet season. I heard James talking about, Alabama earlier about, being wet season right now. But for Saudi Arabia, this is kind of their wet season right now. And it's amazing the active weather that they can get.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about Tampa and the unique challenges it poses, because you've got a lot of people at really low elevation, tropical latitudes. What could possibly go wrong out of that, right?
Exactly. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I want to kind of show a couple images here. And this one here, as Mike Clay knows, if anyone knows anything about Florida weather, they may have heard of Andy Johnson. And Andy Johnson is a longtime meteorologist for the Bay News 9 counterpart for Fox 13 in Tampa. And Andy passed away last Thursday. And this has been getting a lot of media attention across the country. He's a certified consulting meteorologist. He's a certified broadcast meteorologist, and also a fellow of the American Meteorological Society, one of only 10 people in the world to hold all three of those designations. And this is an old snapshot. Andy's a really good friend of mine. And this is when we were at one of the Tampa American Meteorological Society meetings at the Tampa Yacht Club. Andy was the president there. And this next image right here is when we were all there, and I'm going to throw some circles on here. You can see Mike Clay on the right-hand side. I'm kind of in the center there, and Andy Johnson is up on the top. And this really showed how much the meteorological community gets together in the Tampa Bay market. And Mike Clay and many others from all of the Tampa markets were with us. And so Andy was pretty much a pioneer in the field of meteorology across the Tampa Bay area. So I just wanted to put that out there to kind of kick it off, because when you think about meteorology and weather forecasting in Tampa, Andy Johnson, that name kind of comes to mind. So James, when you talk about some of the challenges for Florida weather, there's a lot, and Mike was talking about earlier about whether or not it rains in Florida. And a lot of people think that we always get rain and it's never a drought. Well, right now, just like many parts of the country, Alabama, parts of Texas, and in the Southeast US, we're under extreme to severe drought right now. And we are in the dry season in Florida right now. That usually goes from like October through early May. But last year, our September, the end of our wet season, September of 2025, was extremely dry. So it was a very dry ending to our wet season. And that really kind of pushed over a domino to the whole domino effect, where we didn't see any landfalling tropical storms or hurricanes, thankfully, but there is a price to that. And so we did not receive a lot of the rainfall that we typically would get during the Florida wet season. And we are about to enter our Florida rainy season. Usually that's like late May, but typically June through September. And that can be one of our more significant challenges when it comes to forecasting that. And there's actually a really cool image I wanted to pull up here. And this right here is, we'll go forward one. This right here is research that we did at the National Weather Service in Tampa. And anyone who lives in this area across the whole state, we're very familiar with what's called the flow regimes based on where the subtropical high pressure system is located. And there's 9 different flow regimes that we defined. And you can see here, let's just look at number 2. We're almost in that flow regime right now. So it's a northeast wind. And so you have that high pressure system. So as likely most of the viewers that are watching or listening, they're familiar that high pressure winds flow clockwise around that high pressure system. So if that center of that high pressure system is north of Tampa Bay, then we're going to have an easterly flow. Okay. And that's like what you see in number 2 and number 3. If that high pressure system is pushed southward, say, for example, what we see in number 5, and you can see we'll have number 4 and 5, we'll see like a southwest to westerly flow. And that will usually determine what sea breeze is going to become more dominant during the day across Florida. Now, there's a famous myth, I'll throw it out there, that a lot of people, they may be visiting Florida, could be Tampa Bay, could be Disney over in Orlando, and they're going to say, well, you can set your watch to 2 p.m. and it's always going to rain. Well, not always. Okay, so that's not always true, but it really depends on which direction the wind flow is coming for that day. So say, for example, with an easterly wind, then you can see on the right-hand side, this is the probability of rainfall. So essentially, this is almost like a radar snapshot of where most of the showers and thunderstorms would be forming along the sea breezes. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have the East Coast sea breeze forming, as the sun heats the land, air rises, that cooler ocean air from the Atlantic is going to push in. And depending on how strong that wind is, the West Coast sea breeze is also going to form. But if that easterly wind is really strong, it's going to pin that sea breeze up against our coastline on the west coast of Florida. And we're going to have to wait for later in the day and the evening, almost like today, when we're going to be seeing our showers and thunderstorms. So that's one of the bigger challenges during our wet season. And I'm sure we're going to talk about other weather events like hurricanes, but knowing where is that ridge axis, knowing what is going to be the predominant wind flow on a particular day, that's going to determine not only which sea breeze is going to be most active. Sometimes we'll have both come together. If we have light and variable winds, they'll both come together and we'll have a lot of storms over the central part of the state. But if we have a southwest flow, then Tampa Bay, we're going to get the morning showers and thunderstorms, and it's all going to move off the East Coast. If we have a southeast flow, then we're going to get it later in the day when all of that thunderstorm activity moves from east to west.
And if nothing has happened and you have a very unstable air mass and it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and you're still waiting, then look out about 10 o'clock at night, because there you go.
Yeah. We'll get massive lightning shows like what Mike just described, where Bay News 9 is located. They'll have an amazing view over Tampa Bay, but also off the west coast to see the Gulf. And those storms will just light up on the land breeze, which is essentially the sea breeze that has moved off and now becomes a land breeze over the water. And you'll see some prolific lightning storms, really photogenic. And I'm sure we're going to talk about also an extremely deadly phenomenon in the state of Florida.
So my TV history in Tampa, goes way back, and it is fascinating and very meteorological, for lack of a better word. Talk about a little bit about Roy Leap and how how radar first got important for TV stations before in a lot of other places, and then how you all ended up with a Klystron tubed radar.
You go back with Roy Leap and some of the radars that they had over the years, and pretty amazing the way that, well, right now there are 3 TV stations in Tampa that have their own radars. A lot of markets don't have that. So it's always been big here. We got our first magnetron radar from Barron in 2001, and then they came to us in 2006 and said that they wanted to build a Klystron radar for international sales. and they wanted to put it in about 3 TV stations around the country to prove that they could build it and that people would be using it. And so they liked our product and our facility, and we did the deal, and we had to wait 2 years and keep it secret. And we got it in 2008, turned it on in 2009, and refurbished it completely in 2020. So our Orlando station also has one now. So that's pretty cool that we have one on each coast right now. So we were the first private company. We were a private company back then. Now we're owned by Spectrum. But we were a private company back then, and we were the first private company in the world to own a radar powered by a klystron tube.
Tell me what the difference is between a magnetron and a klystron.
The klystron doesn't really care if you kick it around. Of course, all the WSR 88Ds are klystron. It doesn't care if you're changing modes or staying in any specific mode. It just the magnetron does. The klystron just you can run it in velocity and just leave it. You can run velocity and reflectivity at the same time and just leave it. So it's it's a lot easier to make the power. Of course, it's more expensive too. It's going to last longer, but when you need to replace it, it's going to be a lot more expensive than buying a magnetron. So
What is it?
How much?
No, what is it? What does it do?
There are two different types of tubes that run weather radars, magnetrons and klystrons. And so the klystron, I think, was invented by the Germans about the time of World War II. And so the Weather Service has chosen to have all klystron radars, but most TV stations haven't because it's so much more expensive. So being able to have that capability, and when we launched it in 2009, it was the most Googled term in Tampa Bay. Being able to have that capability and promoting it right was the right thing, because we did a lot of focus groups back then, and it was interesting that they said, I don't care what you say, I don't believe you. So we had to prove it to the viewers. We had to go out of our way to prove how good this radar was to our viewers. And we had a lot of help from Barron, and hopefully they had a lot of success selling it overseas.
How did you sell it to viewers?
We did everything that we do, but we really dug down deep, and we were able to say, this is something that we can do that nobody else can do. And the entire weather department, and we've got 5 people now that have been here over 20 years. The entire weather department bought in, and being able to not only sell it in promotions, but sell it in the weathercast, because we knew from the focus groups that if we just said it was great and just left it there, no one would believe us. And so we had to, every event had to go out of our way to sell the technology and the capability of a live radar. And when it breaks down and we don't have a live radar, we miss it, because it's really cool seeing an update every 30 seconds.
Yep. For both of you, talk a little bit about the relationship between the media and the National Weather Service in Tampa, because in some markets it's contentious, in some markets it's not. Can you talk about that relationship? Because it's really important.
Mm-hmm. And it's totally different in some areas too. I think it's always been good here. The Ruskin office and the Melbourne office, very active and all of that, very good. Of course, in Texas, I work with Fort Worth, and you guys, several of you know that that's always been a really good office. And so Brian was in the MIC chair for a long time, but if we see something, we don't mind bringing it up. They probably have heard my name too often, but I think also NWS chat was a big thing in that when that first came out, being able to communicate live. And John and I worked on the service assessment for Irene, and was when that really came up. Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, real quick, Ken Graham's who brought the chat to the Weather Service. Okay, not sucking up, but that's who it was, right, Brian?
Yeah, it wasn't NWS chat back then. It was on the old Yahoo Messenger that I was using in Lubbock as WCM. And yeah, Birmingham. Yeah, Birmingham was the office that first tested it, and it became through Iowa State University the IEM chat. So it definitely evolved over the years. But yeah, John, like you and what Mike mentioned, I think the NWS chat system just allowed the NWS to become more communicated, with media, and also emergency managers. That system is including with core partners, across the country. It could be fire partners, Coast Guard. There's emergency managers across the whole area. But I remember even, thinking back to when I was WCM in Lubbock, where I mentioned earlier with that 2005 tornado outbreak that we had. There was May 11, 2005, when we had an F3 tornado, two of them that were going through the area. And the NBC, it was CBS market in Lubbock, John Robinson. In fact, Mike Clay knows him. I know maybe Troy, you know him. John was in the instant messenger with us. And so I was producing a lot of information and letting them know where was the tornado on the ground, looking at the radar, showing the velocity couplet. And out there, it's different, right? I mean, there was a lot of lead time because we were able to track this very textbook supercell and to really let people know, okay, it is 40 minutes away from you. It is 15 minutes away from you. And so John Robinson was on there, KCBD, if memory serves. And he was on there, and literally the on-camera meteorologists were looking at the screen, and then all of a sudden they would look to the side, they would read the NWS chat verbatim live on camera. And so the daughter of the man whose home was destroyed, I went there and was able to talk to him the next day. He said that because of John Robinson in that example, that saved his life because he was able to get in a vehicle. Again, something we should tell people not to do, but he was able to get in a vehicle because there was enough lead time, get out of the way, and he survived. I went there the next day with the MIC, Justin Weaver, a good friend of mine, and the home was completely destroyed, well off the foundation. The trees were debarked. In fact, John, I saw almost reminds of Michigan, that I know you had talked about in previous ones. But, the stubbing of the branches, the debarking of the tree, that man said, I likely would not be alive to talk with you today if the National Weather Service was not providing information to media. And it was phenomenal. So, yeah, like Mike Clay said, a very, very strong relationship between the National Weather Service Tampa Bay office and with all of the markets. And I have to say, it's not just because of the National Weather Service office, it's because of the media market and all of the meteorologists, chief meteorologists through the entire teams that want to collaborate. They want to collaborate. As you may know, the National Weather Service every year holds what's called IWT. It's an integrated warning team, and that includes media and emergency managers. They're not just there to listen, they're there to speak as well. So we learn from one another, and that has greatly strengthened the relationship over the years.
Yeah, let me say this real quick. Mike, I'm glad you speak up in the chat, and I'm glad James Spann speaks up in the chat, and James Adeldot. It's for you guys, and offices that are not doing the right thing should be called out and spoken to. That's
Call him out, John. Who is it?
I'm not going to say.
Let's get real. Let's just call him out right here.
No,
let me say one. John, let me say one thing. The NWS chat started with a couple of guys before Ken Graham, a couple of guys named Ron Murphy and Tom Bradshaw.
That's right.
Some of you might know these guys, but Ron and Tom met me for lunch, and they wanted to talk about somehow developing a better line of communication, and their idea was to use Yahoo Chat. And so we got everybody in the TV community and the weather service in Birmingham got on Yahoo Chat, and it was outstanding. And that was the birth of National Weather Service Chat. And it obviously, Daryl Hertzman at Iowa State, he took over. And then when Ken got in his position, he got us over to Slack, which made all the difference in the world. And again, this is not Daryl's fault at all. Daryl's a genius. He's incredible. But a lot of things were out of his control. But Ken enhanced it. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Murphy and Bradshaw. Those were the two guys that started it.
That's awesome. And it all started with you at lunch. That's a cool story.
Yeah.
Was that at Jim's Barbecue in Billingsley?
Man, I wish it would have been at Jim's. No, it was at O'Charlie's. I remember it well.
And I don't think a lot of the new people coming into the business, they probably don't appreciate where us elderlies used to be with the communication. I mean, that chat that was huge. at the time, I mean, we had wires printing and bells going off. And so to be able to, like Ryan's story, to be able to see something and say it on TV immediately was incredible. We had a tornado here. We don't have a lot of them. We had a tornado here. Same situation, tornado warning. We're on the air. And one of the people in Ruskin wrote, "It's on the ground." That's all I need to know if I'm on TV. And just a few words, and you can communicate. If you know the people on the other end, you can communicate very well.
So just as an aside, I got in trouble because we had a renegade AOL chat in Tulsa. I won't say all the parties involved, but most of the TV and government agencies were in it. And I was in there fiddling around. You could set up custom WAV files for whoever would send messages. So I just put all kinds of obnoxious noises on. And of course, we're on the air during tornado warnings, and you start hearing bike honk horns and Star Trek red alerts and haunted house screams. Yeah, I had to do a little bit of talking after that to apologize. But no, that has been a remarkable improvement. But let's pivot a little bit and talk about the uniqueness of the Tampa Bay area, because you have had so many close calls with hurricanes, but not a direct hit, which is both good and bad. I wondered if you two would take a shot at discussing that.
I think also our population has gone way up in Pinellas County. Look up a map, look up Pinellas County, Florida. There's about as many people as there are in Montana. So it's very densely populated. To my shock, during Milton, the evacuation went very, very well. It was very smooth. But Helene had come a few weeks earlier and got people's attention. But, you know, there are still people recovering from Helene. We did a story 2 weeks ago about a restaurant down on the beach that was just reopening. So Helene was a really big deal here. It was an incredible storm surge.
Well, one thing too, guys, just throwing it in here, is the unique geography. I mean, with Tampa Bay, everything depends on, is that thing coming from 180 degrees or 160 degrees, or is it 220 degrees? Some of the most amazing video that I've ever seen is how Tampa Bay just it's like bad plumbing. It'll back up and fill up, or it'll empty out. It doesn't take long for it to happen. It's amazing, the video.
And Troy, I think also looking at that, you know, there's a really good image that I've shown over the years, and this one right here. Let me just hit the display so everyone can see. This one here, like you were talking about, you know, the direction at which a storm is approaching the state. We're really unique, being a peninsula, and also obviously Texas with its north-south coastline. But any state that has that north-south coastline is extremely vulnerable to a lot of shifts in the track. So this is Hurricane Ian's track, and you can see. We'll just look at the bottom left image over here, and so Hurricane Ian, this was September 2022, so September 28, 2022, and Hurricane Ian was making landfall on that Wednesday afternoon, and it was moving off to the northeast and made landfall in Fort Myers. And if that storm had shifted just 20 miles to the left, so again, that's well within the error, that's well within that cone of uncertainty for where the center of a storm can go. So if Ian had just shifted a little bit to the left by 20 miles, I drew a line, and look where it made landfall, you know, Tampa Bay. And if it shifted 25 miles to the west, I drew another line, and that's on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can see that it hit Cedar Key. So we're talking a difference of 125 miles to over 265 miles from where Hurricane Ian made landfall. And that's what really makes it challenging for these very large storms. But also, as you said, I'm going to stop sharing here. There is another factor here, is the storm does not have to come directly to Tampa Bay in order for there to be significant hazards. And a really good example of that, I'm looking at another image here, is going to be Hurricane Idalia, which was, you know, 1 year later in 2023. And this image kind of speaks volumes right here. And you can see this was the track of Hurricane Idalia. So again, this is 2023, 1 year after Hurricane Ian. And I remember Mike and I talking about this as he was on the air nonstop. And this storm, if you look at the center where it says 100, the center of Idalia was 100 miles west of the coastline. So 100 miles west of us, and you could see the pictures here of how much flooding was occurring in Tampa Bay, north up to Cedar Key, close to 7 feet. There was about, a little over 4 feet in Tampa Bay. And that just shows how this area, you don't need a direct landfall to have significant impacts. And we've had those direct landfalls, of course, right? The Gulf of Mexico is extremely vulnerable, to these types of storms. And look at this image here. I mean, this is just impressive when you look at 2017 to 2023, and I'll show the updated one here, but look at the entire Gulf, the number of major hurricanes. So again, this isn't every tropical storm or hurricane. This is major hurricane, category 3, 4, or 5. And you can see Florida, with Hurricane Irma and Ian and Idalia and Michael ending at 2023. But if we updated this through last year, look at this. I mean, Mike knows this well. He was just talking about Milton, but you can see here, we have Irma, we have Ian and Milton, Idalia, Helene, and Michael. And a lot of people ask me when they see this graphic, they're like, well, what happened to, where's Debbie? And Debbie was in 2024 in August, but Debbie didn't make landfall as a major hurricane. Debbie made landfall as a category 1, still very significant. We received significant flooding across the Tampa Bay and southward area. And then Helene came, which gave us tons of flooding over the area, but storm surge that we have not seen since our significant signature storm back in 1921. That was October 25th, 1921 was the last time that Tampa Bay had a direct hit from a major hurricane until Hurricane Helene and Milton came to the Tampa Bay area.
So Brian and Mike, Brian, you mentioned, do people in the Tampa Bay area understand that a storm does not, do they overall understand that it doesn't have, the center doesn't have to come over Tampa?
I think some people do, a lot of people do not, but okay. I want to make sure, Mike, because he talked about Milton, but I think Hurricane Ian in 2022 really opened the eyes to a lot of people from Tampa Bay southward, because they saw firsthand the destruction that happened in Fort Myers with over 15 feet of storm surge. And so many people from Tampa Bay evacuated southward. So many people in Tampa Bay have family and friends in Fort Myers. So I think that storm was pivotal, even though Tampa Bay actually lost water from it. But Mike, what do you think on that one? Because I know you were talking about that earlier.
Well, I think with Helene, in some point in the future, may save lives, because that got people's attention. If you weren't flooded, you knew someone who was, or someone who lost their job, or someone that just moved and just left. So that was so pivotal that it'll take a generation for people to forget about Helene. And it was way offshore, and it made landfall in the Big Bend. We had our storm surge, our station in my house on the north side of Tampa Bay. So we're way up into Tampa Bay. The storms, I left the station at 12:30 a.m. and it was dry. And I got home, and at 1:15, a meteorologist texted me. He was leaving, and he said, I barely got out. So in 45 minutes, this area far up the bay at 1 in the morning flooded, and the eye was already made landfall in the Big Bend. So it took that long for the storm surge to come all the way up into Tampa Bay in that situation. Surprised a lot of people. There's a lady that lives near me at my dry cleaners, and so many people lost their cars because they didn't take simple steps that could have moved the cars to a better spot. The dry cleaners was on high ground. It didn't flood. I asked her why they lost both their cars. I said, why didn't you just bring your cars here in the afternoon? And she said, because the core missed us and we had a high thin overcast, she thought it was over. And we didn't get much rain that afternoon. I never would have thought to go on the air and say, hey folks, this isn't over yet, because the core did miss us, and the winds just got us on the backside. So it got people's attention, and people started thinking about it. So many people, Troy, lost their cars because they just didn't go to the drugstore parking lot down the street, which was on higher ground. They just assumed it wasn't going to happen.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
On that line of thought, I'd love to crosswalk something with you guys. I, in my grad school years, and then for the next couple after that, I did research on something I'd heard a lot in severe weather. I called it folk science, where people do observe local climatology almost too well. They make inferences about the meaningfulness of it, and then they assume that there's something protective about places that don't get hit in these extremely rare geospatially dispersed events, right? Even though we look at things, from the sky down and don't see things that way, we see things sort of smooth. When you're looking at it from the ground up, all these geographic markers, delineations of urban boundaries, everything else that you interact with day to day, that's how you reason about these things. And when in 2017, after Irma, I saw a newspaper article where they interviewed somebody who was saying, "Oh yeah, I'm not surprised we didn't get hit because Tampa had been for a while. It was a concern." Well, it never hits us. It always goes south, or it always goes north, and it never hits here. And that was exactly what I heard with tornadoes elsewhere in the country. So I was curious and I was very worried when Ian was coming, plausibly toward Tampa, and with the impacts of all the different hazards considered, that was a pervasive belief. Is this something that you heard while working there?
Absolutely. And, going back to Waco, Troy, with the Brazos River and the
Yep.
F5 tornado, it goes, can't hit here. But when I first got here, everybody was saying, man, we don't get hit. And we had a lot of threats over the years and near misses. I think that attitude may be changing a little bit, but sometimes 5 years goes by and people go back.
I still tell people, just say never, and you will see.
Yeah, it's something that we've been battling. I think every area, every geographic area has that false perception of safety, whether it be tornadoes or blizzards, or I remember Corpus Christi, like, oh, we haven't had a major hurricane since Hurricane Celia in 1970. And when I was working there, that was the signature storm. And we had Arlene, and what was it, 93, and then came Hurricane Brett in 1999 that went south. And so a lot of people in South Texas feel that they can't get hit. And then came Hurricane Harvey, right? And so same thing in Florida, where climatologically it is a lower probability for the west, the Tampa Bay area, and also the northeast portion of Florida near Jacksonville to get an impact. But both of those areas have been blown away by that myth has been blown away, I should say, by hurricanes that have impacted over the last 5 years. And Tampa Bay, Kim, right when you started asking that question, I thought about a lot of the myths that I hear from going out over the years, and even lately, this magical protection that the Tampa Bay area has. Some people I've heard talk about the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which connects the counties over the bay, and they say that there's some magnetic field that the Skyway Bridge protects us, and of course that's false. We've heard of other Indian burial grounds, that protect native lands.
Right.
I know you hear that, Mike, in Pinellas County. That's been a popular one, and so yeah, it's something that I think media, National Weather Service, emergency managers, all of us, social scientists, need to continue. It's every year, right? It's every single year we have to beat the drum on preparedness and helping people understand not only uncertainty but risk, because no matter where you live, you're going to have both of those elements that you have to learn more about.
And I tell you, Kim, where that's getting bad now is in South Florida, because they haven't been hit in so long, and they are a thumb sticking out for a major hurricane. And we know the population in Miami and the Fort Lauderdale area is just insane. So I know they're fighting that in South Florida right now, more than probably we are, because we've had more activity on the West Coast.
It's Hurricane Katrina, right? I mean, Hurricane Katrina was the last landfall that occurred in Miami's area in 2005. And look, we're 21 years. So, yes, really great point, Mike.
And it was a 1 when it happened. So imagine,
yeah,
John.
Okay. So Wilma came close. Charlie really came close. And I flew a lot of storms that were kind of near you. The one that I always think about, Tampa. Mike, remember Elena? The loop?
Yep.
The weirdest track of them all. WeatherBrains listeners, look at Elena 85. Remember that, James Spann?
I was in Dallas, and that was the most bizarre track you will ever see. If you don't know about Elena, go study that one. It was just mind-boggling.
And what I think of Mike and Brian about Tampa, I worry about the Skyway Bridge. I looked at what Katrina did to the bridges in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. I mean, I don't know what it's built to, but I'm telling you, that would not be good.
Yeah, it's definitely. In fact, Mike, what was the name of that really short duration tropical
Oh,
storm that was named early morning, and the counties were not able to shut down the bridge fast enough, and so there were still some cars that were on the bridge. And yeah, this was a storm. It was a weak system. It moved from the northern Gulf of Mexico as a short wave, and it developed tropical characteristics right off the coast of Tampa Bay, and it was right around sunrise and morning commute. And yeah, they had to shut down the bridge, and some cars were still on there. Thankfully, the winds were not overly strong, but definitely you can go back to the 80s. Look at 1980 with just a windstorm with some fog that blew across the area, and the ship went into the old Skyway Bridge, and a lot of fatalities in that area.
So for the WeatherBrains listeners, Mike and Brian, tell everyone what would the 1921 hurricane do today in Tampa Bay right now? What would it do?
Mike, you go. I'll go after you.
fatalities, I think could
Just
be
what would it do
extreme.
overall?
Yeah, we would lose a lot of people. The surge up we already have people recovering from Helene, so it would wipe out the coastal locations for a long time, 5 years probably. And I think it was probably a lot like Milton. It was late in the season and it came in fast. It was probably being sheared apart. So that kind of windstorm and that kind of surge south of the center. So the Tarpon Springs hurricane is always our poster child for the worst case for Tampa Bay, coming in just barely to the north and racing up from the Caribbean late in the season, coming up from the Western Caribbean where the water's warm.
And another thing to think about too, because yeah, like Mike said, the Milton track is very unusual. You know, that is rarely ever seen here, coming up from the southwest like that and having a lot of time to move over the warm waters of the Gulf before it makes landfall. But we have to also understand that not every hurricane is the same, right? And so the 1921 storm was a relatively compact system, just like a Hurricane Charlie. So you have to look at Hurricane Charlie that made landfall in the exact same location as Hurricane Ian, the exact same location, Cayo Costa down in Southwest Florida. And so why I bring that up is because they were both Category 4 hurricanes, okay? However, keep that in mind, Charlie 2004 was Category 4 hurricane, August 13th, 2004. Now you look at September 28, 2022, Hurricane Ian, Category 4 at landfall, but the radius of maximum wind, like how large is that hurricane? Charlie was very small. It had a very small radius, or how far out the hurricane winds go. And that produced about six to 7 feet of storm surge, which is still significant. No one wants 6 or 7 feet of storm water in their homes. However, Category 4 Hurricane Ian made landfall. I personally measured 15.4 feet on the coastal side in Fort Myers. And again, so the category does not capture everything. The category is a wind scale. And so it's about what are the impacts going to be? It could be inland flooding, it could be gusty wind, it could be storm surge. And as we saw with Hurricane Milton, extremely, extremely powerful category for a storm, making landfall just south of Tampa Bay. But like Mike said, it made landfall south of us near Sarasota. So the winds were actually east and blowing water out of Tampa Bay. So yeah, worst case, if that 1921 storm hit again, we would see significant flooding. Again, like Mike said, the population density has increased. But one thing that I remember after Hurricane Ian was debris management. A lot of meteorologists don't talk about debris management, right? That's more on the emergency management realm and public works. However, they're still doing debris management after Hurricane Ian over Southwest Florida. So that's transporting a lot of the debris from one place to another. It could be other states that want to buy debris. They do that. Or just clearing it out so people can get back to business.
Okay, so I saw Tornado Talk. Jen, I'm going to tag you up here. And I saw weather history the other day, F4, 1966. 1966 that apparently went across the state. Oh, we have a visitor. Hold on. We have breaking news. Hello, visitor.
Aw.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
My youngest has come to just say hi. Hi, everybody. Can you say hi, everybody?
Hi, everybody.
Oh,
Aw.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry,
Awesome.
carry on with the science. Carry on.
So, 1966, Mike and Brian allegedly, and Jen, you jump in since you know a lot more, but allegedly went across the whole state as an F4?
Well,
That would not be good.
there's a question there on that. Grisula
Yeah.
thinks it was certainly a family. So, yeah, let's talk about it and kind of what do you guys know, both Brian and Mike, about this event? Because it did contain an F4 that started in the Gulf and then headed east toward Lakeland area or just north of there. Strongest tornado that we know of on record in Florida, right?
Yeah, Florida's never seen an F5, however, has seen two F4s. And yeah, April 1958, I think April 15, 1958. And then just the anniversary, was it just yesterday or so, April 5 or recently 1966. So again, both were F4s. Of course, engineering practices, tornado damage survey practices were significantly different back then. That was before Fujita put out the F scale in 1970. And so definitely very significant path, very significant damage to even be rated F4 back then. But yeah, look at it now. I mean, Mike, we were talking about this offline. That track, that would be devastating if that intense of a tornado moved across that track.
Even if it were a family of tornadoes, it would be devastating. And I got here in 97, and that was just going into the El Nino, 97, 98. And we got here, we went on the air in September 97. We launched, we went right into that winter. We had tornadoes in October, we had tornadoes on Halloween. And the other meteorologist, Alan Winfield, who started with me then, he had worked in Oklahoma, and we were looking at each other like, where have we moved? What's going on in this state? Because we had tornadoes at Christmas. We had, of course, the big tornado that hit Kissimmee. I think that was in February '98.
Mm-hmm.
As little did we know, it hasn't happened anything like that since. But that was a crazy winter.
And these are significant tornadoes that are not tropical. They're not coming in from a hurricane. Talk about the setups for those and what you guys look for on a bigger scale of when you're looking at possibility of bigger outbreaks like that.
I remember we had to educate a producer who had lived here her whole life, and we had basically a tornadic waterspout coming across the Gulf. All the signatures on radar, it was about to make landfall, hook and everything. And she was going, "What's the big deal? We have waterspouts here all the time in the summer, and they don't do anything." And we were like, "No, you don't understand what's coming in. This is going to do immediate damage. Welcome to an El Nino." So we had that going in 97, 98.
Yeah, I love going to Florida, and I go to Sarasota County all the time. I love it there, from Sarasota down toward Venice and Inglewood. And I did a lot of research in January. I went to Hillsborough County, I went to Pinellas and Polk, and started going through some of these tracks. One of the oldest is from 1909, and so it's been amazing to go. And so that 1966 event really fascinates me to try to nail down. In fact, I talked to Thomas Grisoulas, and he's like, if you can find more evidence of the two tracks, I mean, it's such a tricky event. But are you guys familiar with the 1978 Clearwater tornado?
Yeah.
It hit. Talk about that, Mike, because that one was one I had never heard of before, and it was really tragic.
78, and there was another one in early 90s in almost the same spot. So there's been and a lot of it in the wintertime, or what we would consider our dry seasons. So
Yeah.
the 70s
Yeah,
were really rough.
they were. Yeah, that 1978 that here at Clearwater hit an elementary school, and there were three kindergartners that were killed. And I actually interviewed a woman whose dad was across the field in another school, and he ran across that school was fine. He ran across this field and started pulling kids out, and he was just PTSD was so bad he quit teaching. It was so these are like circumstances surrounding these events that we don't even really think about. It was just a really tragic event.
And how
So,
everything goes around. When we moved here in 97, my wife was a speech therapist at that school.
Oh,
And
wow.
she knew one lady in the front office who had been there for that tornado.
Ugh.
That's High Point Elementary. And they told her that the worst part was they couldn't identify the kids that were fine because it was a neighborhood school. So after the tornado hit and the school was destroyed, a lot of parents just came and picked up the kids, walked, took them home, and then after a couple of hours, they were like, "Well, who do we have and who's missing?"
Yeah.
They couldn't figure it
Yeah.
out.
Oh, so awful.
And then that event too, like that brings up a good example that when you and Mike were talking about, like the difference between a water spout making landfall as a tornado that typically will weaken not long after it makes landfall. But you're talking about like that event with Clearwater was actually a supercell over the water that moved inland, much like what we saw, with the superstorm in '93, where a lot of those tornadic supercells were moving over the Gulf and moving inland. Those were water spouts over the water, but they were true tornadoes on the water, mesocyclonic tornadoes on the water versus a water spout, which usually forms in a different process from that near the surface of the water up to the base of the cloud. But that one there moved in as a supercell tornado on the water, made landfall, and did that horrific destruction, and very similar to what we saw with a lot of the tornadoes in the March superstorm in '93.
And I realized then it's very difficult as a broadcast meteorologist to communicate that when 90% of the population has seen a water spout off when they're boating in the summer and kicks up a little sand on the beach, and that's about it. And then it's offshore and there's a special marine warning and it says water spout. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, but when you have all the radar signatures and the tools we have today, we know better. We have to communicate that.
I want to take this opportunity since we brought up the El Nino. We had a listener question, or Karen asked, any predictions on a very strong El Nino setup this year? What do y'all think?
Don't speak at once.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like what we've already talked about. I mean, we're looking at right now. We're still really in a weak La Nina. Everyone wants to kind of shove us out of it so quickly, but it's still it's holding on like a thread. It's still a very weak La Nina technically. And then the transition is going to neutral, and it looks like that will probably be in a moderate to even a strong El Nino as we get into the latter half of the hurricane season. And usually it takes a while for the atmosphere to respond to that oceanic signal. It's not just okay, we now have 1 degree Celsius and 1.5 degrees Celsius in the Eastern Pacific, and we're in El Nino, so we're going to look for severe weather in Florida. It doesn't go that quick, but you have to understand that by the time we get into next winter, like late this year, December, January, February, March of next year, as long as the El Nino stays on the current forecast, then we could be looking at another significant severe weather season. But I also have to say that the atmosphere is not binary. It is not positive or negative in terms of what the impacts may be, because Mike and I talked about this many times. The winter of late 2009 into early 2010, we were all, the National Weather Service, and with Mike and others across the Tampa Bay market, we were talking about the potential for, okay, this may be like 1998. We're looking at a strong El Nino that's going to be developing in the winter of 09 and 10. But what happened? Another piece to that atmospheric climate puzzle came into play, known as the Arctic Oscillation. And we had what's called a negative phase, a negative Arctic Oscillation. And that suppressed a lot of the severe weather activity. And we had flurries and we had temperatures in the teens. Remember that, Mike?
I remember one time we were concerned about a system coming in and possible severe weather, and it was 50 degrees. I was like, guys, come on, it's 50. And I don't care if it's an El Nino. And all it did was rain. So that can happen too.
This is awesome. I am loving this. And we had a couple of other listeners. I'm going to go ahead and continue with those real quick. And guys, I sent you some radar imagery. I'm going to pull that up real quick. Here, Angel wanted to know, this is from tonight, if you could kind of talk about what we're looking at here. So her question is specifically, these are radar scope images, hopefully that's showing, but it's kind of a mess. And she calls it a mess. What's causing the messy velocity displays? Can you guys try to, it's really pretty colors. Can you?
C-band for the loss.
I can share a live imagery, well, not live, it was older, but of that. I kind of called up radar scope here. And so this is looking back to that time frame. And so this was like around 6:30 or so, if memory serves. And so what we're looking at is a phenomenon known as de-alias. So de-aliased velocity. And that's only going to happen on some software packages, or I should say it's only going to be visible on some software packages. In the National Weather Service offices, and probably with Mike, with Bay News 9, Klystron, that there's actually filters that can be applied when we're looking at this high resolution radar data inside the National Weather Service. And so you're looking at here, right here, you can see the reflectivity. I've got the Tampa Bay National Weather Service radar highlighted. I'm going to switch to the terminal Doppler weather radar. And so this is looking at the same time period. This is where some of the radar velocity de-aliasing was more pronounced. And you can see these kind of purple, and meteorologists, we call it like the purple haze. You can see these bands kind of emanating out from the center of the radar, which is at MacDill Air Force Base. So this is a terminal Doppler weather radar. And this is an S band, but it is also susceptible to attenuation for the terminal Doppler radars. And so basically, these visual displays typically found on radar apps and websites will not be able to filter out. So de-aliased velocity is showing where you have different motions coming from different directions of showers and thunderstorms in the area, and the velocity data is not filtered out. That shows an error. So basically, it is an error in the velocity data that's not being filtered out. You don't usually see it when you get stronger reflectivity signals. Like, let's zoom in over here. So we can see this cell right here. And let me make my cursor bigger. So right over here, you can see the velocity, the de-aliasing, or that error kind of goes away. And that's even using this radar scope app as well. So again, it's a velocity error.
That is great, man.
And right before that, I noticed the wind was calm,
Yeah.
and it was really humid. So that doesn't help the radar either.
Yeah, that's great. Well, one more question. This kind of moves into a different topic too. But this came in from Kate. Is Tampa Bay seeing more extreme heat days versus South Florida? There's just an observation from her. It seems like that seems to be the trend over the last few years. So what is it with the extreme heat? And talk about that a little bit here for West Central Florida.
Well, Brian, it's a touchy subject.
You're going to say urban. That's one thing.
We like those here, apparently.
Our ASOS is at the airport, which has seen tremendous growth, and it's right beside the runway. And so the question is the growth and causing the problem around the urbanization around the airport, or is it just measuring the climate around the airport, which is what it's supposed to do? So yeah, that's a tough question, because we fight that all the time, and we can see it was a year that we went and we had a number of temperature spikes, and I think you guys sent it back to Southern Region, and they were like, no, and they removed some of them. So it's and people always ask me, well, why is it there? Well, the ASOS is for the FAA, and they care about wind and visibility and pressure and things like that. Really don't care about the temperature location, and there's probably no other place around the airport to put it, right, Brian? And even if there were, there's no money to move it, which would be expensive.
Yeah, it's the location plays a role, but I think also looking at other records, right, Mike? So I mean, you look at Ruskin. So we, because of that event, where it was actually Mike and one of his colleagues at Bay News 9, Josh Linker, we all got together and we were talking about the urbanization of the Tampa Bay area, but it's not just that location. We've seen record high temperatures over our cooperative observer sites, even in Ruskin, which is far away from most urbanization. It is developing, but now seeing record high temperatures in Ruskin that we haven't seen in many decades. So I think there's a balance, because I've also seen Southeast Florida also have many records over the past 5 years. Another good point, I think you said the person was Kate or Katie that was adding that question there, which is a really good one, is the water temperatures. And so over the past 5 years, we've also had record what's called marine heat waves. And it's actually been warmer in Miami Bay than it has been in Tampa Bay. But there's been times where the water temperature in Tampa Bay off Clearwater Beach is getting to the upper 90s during some days. And that's the more shallow surface of the water as well. Obviously, you go deeper, you get cooler, but that also contributes to the record high temperatures. And another one, if you remember when I was talking about those wind flow regimes, so based on the direction of the wind, like Mike talked about, how Tampa International Airport is expanding. There's a lot of concrete around the area. And so just to the east of the automated surface observing system is a new parking garage. So if we had like a strong east wind, that could influence the temperature. However, we've seen record temperatures out of other directions as well coming off the water. So there is an urban effect in some of the big cities like Tampa with the airport, also Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, depending on where those sensors are. But what we've also seen is outside of those FAA-owned ASOS, automatic surface observing system, is that there's been record high temperatures increasing at the rural areas. So I think that that's another signal for overall climate change, is that we're seeing this in rural areas as well, which is pretty significant.
All right, let me bring up two things. Can you talk about the 93 storm of the century, what it did for Tampa, and also talk about the red tide algae, which I think would intrigue our listeners about what you guys are dealing with, because I think most people are oblivious.
Well, let's see. You do the algae.
You're giving me the algae, Mike. What do you do?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be good. And I can show some graphics when you talk about the superstorm. The harmful algal bloom is something called Florida red tide. And so if you're a beach goer, this can happen at most any beach, right? So I remember being in Corpus Christi, driving down, to the bayfront, and you would smell a lot of dead fish. And people were wondering what's going on. Is it a disease or what's happening? But no, it was called red tide. And so red tide is algae in the water that takes oxygen out of the water. So this is kind of that intersection between meteorology and oceanography and also public health, because the National Weather Service in Tampa was the first office in the agency to work with another part of NOAA called the National Ocean Service. And together we were producing what's called a beach hazard statement. And in that, we were predicting where that algae would go. So basically the algae blooms. It doesn't matter if it's warm or cold water, but it does happen in seasonal times of year. And also if there's, say, a lot of rainfall that occurs, and then there's something called freshwater runoff. So again, water hits the land, maybe people are fertilizing, the water runs that fertilizers and nutrients into the water system, into the bay, into the Gulf or the Atlantic or wherever you may be. And so that feeds the algae in the water. People wonder, well, is that bad? Well, yes. So it's very bad. So the algae will then bloom, and then it'll take the oxygen out of the water. It's called hypoxia. And then fish can die. They can be contaminated by this algae. And then there's also something in Florida. We have manatees. A lot of people have manatees, but for Tampa Bay, manatees are very well known. They're called like sea cows, but very friendly. They don't bite. They're protected species. You can't mess around with them. But they will eat seagrass, okay? Why do I bring that up? Algae will be on the seagrass. So the manatees will eat the seagrass, and it's like a chain of reaction. They then become paralyzed by the toxins in this harmful algae, and they will drown if they're not rescued by Florida Fish and Wildlife, other response officials. And I know Bay News 9 and Mike have talked about it on their newscast as well. And so when hurricanes impact the area, they can actually transport algae blooms from off Fort Myers, off Tampa Bay, and they can redirect it where that storm surge may go. So you can get algae going up a river in Southwest Florida or Tampa Bay, or after Hurricane Irma, algae was transported from the west coast of Florida on up into Mobile Bay. So again, it's something to think about. It's a public health issue. People who have respiratory issues like asthma will be severely impacted. I was out at the beach and went closer on a boardwalk, and immediately I could not breathe. You breathe in the toxin and you just can't breathe. So you have to get out of the area. So again, something very significant that happens. It's not just limited to Tampa Bay. It occurs off of Southeast Florida. It occurs in Lake Erie, where they'll have a different type of algae. It's a green algae. It's called cyanobacteria. So look that one up, cyanobacteria. And it's significant in Lake Erie because that's their drinking supply, right? And so we don't drink the water in Tampa Bay, but they drink the water in Lake Erie. So when they have an algal bloom there, that's a significant impact. Algal blooms are seen off Gulf of Alaska. It's caused by something called domoic acid. It infects shellfish. So think of crabs. Think of crab legs and seafish, seafood and seafish, and off of the Gulf of Maine. So again, not local to Florida, but algae is a significant factor that meteorologists and oceanographers will forecast.
And the 93 storm, I don't want to give the impression that we have massive storms all the time, because this is really a great place to live. And the weather is usually pretty quiet all the time. It's really nice. But the 93 superstorm and for the young folks watching may not be familiar with, there's a really good NWS service assessment online. Just Google that, of the 93 superstorm. It goes into great detail of everything that happened that night. But we had on our coast and up into the Big Bend a terrible storm surge. No one ever thought that there would be a storm surge of that magnitude from a winter storm. And it was cold air. It was in the mid 40s, and it was cold water being pushed ashore by this storm surge with that derecho coming across the Gulf of Mexico. And it was quite dangerous, especially up in the Big Bend area. And it took the Weather Service by surprise, took a lot of people by surprise that could happen from a winter storm. I remember I was in Austin when that happened, and I remember watching the long range of the old Austin radar on the long range, and we could see the squall line forming off the Texas Big Bend. And it was over
Yep.
for us. It was cold front had come through, but we were going, wow, that's the storm that's supposed to hit Florida. And it went all the way across the Gulf of Mexico as a squall line.
Well, it actually, that system produced even snow as far south as the Florida Panhandle, right? And back into southern Georgia.
I think James
Yep.
was in some of that snow.
Yep. Yeah. We had
Oh, yeah.
snow at Pensacola. We had
Thunder,
snow at Milton, convective snow. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
one for the ages. We were in the cold sector up here.
And severe weather all the way down to Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. I think they had a tornado down there. So I think in all of our careers, that's going to be one of the top 5 events that we've ever witnessed.
Well, Brian, that system produced one of the highest non-tropical cyclone related thunderstorm wind gusts, I think at Key West, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, when it crossed in the early morning hours.
Yeah, that was very significant, even in the Tampa Bay area. I mean, there were gusts over 80, 90 miles an hour across much of, right ahead of the squall line, as Mike said, like with the derecho that moved forward. And derecho is just a very fast moving, large complex of high wind gusts producing thunderstorms that moved in. And that essentially was what it was. And like you said, I mean, there were blizzards, blizzard warnings and feet of snow. I was in Connecticut at the time in college for meteorology in Connecticut, and had a lot of snow from that system in March of 93. And a year later, I go to Corpus Christi, which is where that low pressure system formed right off of the coastline over the western Gulf of Mexico at the time, and raced eastward. And significant tornadoes, extremely high wind gusts. And that's what typically we can see during the most extreme type of winter severe storms during El Nino years. And again, repeated 5 years later with the Kissimmee tornado that Mike mentioned earlier in 1998.
I may have, if anybody else has any follow-up questions, I've got one. Oh, John, fire off your, oh, okay. Yeah, you were making an El Nino comment. What is the, I mean, I've talked a lot about hurricanes and some of the big things. What are the sneaky weather hazards that you deal with in Tampa?
I would say first strikes from ordinary afternoon thunderstorms with lightning, and some of the first strikes have been the deadliest, and there's nothing really showing up yet on radar just yet, and already we're getting cloud to ground as the sea breeze comes in at noon, 1 o'clock, something like that. Brian?
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. I was going to talk about lightning because, the National Weather Service, we don't issue anything for lightning. We may issue a special weather statement. We may talk about if there happens to be like a prolific lightning producer with very high density flash, number of lightning strikes. But we don't issue a warning. There's not a lightning warning because, like Mike mentioned, I mean, by definition, every thunderstorm produces lightning. So if we were to issue a warning for lightning, then there'll be a lot of people that be desensitized over the warning process. Yeah. And that goes back to thinking about Florida in general, because Florida, I'm going to tie in Florida and Oklahoma here, Kim, because Oklahoma recently took the I don't want to say the prize because no one wants the lightning, but for the lightning density Oklahoma took it last year, but Florida still holds the record, unfortunately, for the greatest number of people killed every single year from lightning strikes. And I will say that because of outreach that Mike and I and many, many others across the entire country have done over the years for lightning preparedness, is that go back like 15 years ago, on average, there were about 50, 55 people that were killed every single year from lightning. And that's become almost half. So about half of that, like 20 to 25 people on average, are killed. And that's still way too many, way too many. But Florida, unfortunately, still holds the greatest number of people that are killed every year from lightning strikes.
I worked with a project at Norman with Kim. What was it, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago at NSSL? And I can tell you she knows lightning. It was very impressive. We talked a lot about lightning, and in Florida.
Yeah, you guys have a really pernicious problem there. And in part, the tools that folks are creating to try to forecast for lightning, I mean, that's one of the big challenges. You guys have a really challenging convective regime where it just pops up. And it's really hard to describe unless you've been to Florida. So I actually, the first time that I got to see Florida was when I went with Gina Esco, who's now the director of the Weather Program Office. But she and I were roommates, and she had an NSF grant to study hurricane kind of uncertainty depictions along the coast. We went down and we were driving through Tampa as one of our stops. And we just were stunned. We had never seen anything like that. And we had, I'd storm chased. I was good with driving through adverse conditions, but the storms that produce the lightning there, I think there's just something to the depth of the clouds, like just the volume that you can get because of just how like high, your storms are going there and how rich the moisture is. It's hard to describe. And it's stationary, it's moving so slowly. It's such an interesting thing. And you all have a lot of visitors, a lot of people who aren't native, and it's just a tough problem. So hats off to you for what you have been able to achieve in mitigating that problem. You're right,
And a
Mike.
lot of it,
Yeah.
and a lot of it comes from what we would call non-synoptic weather.
Yep.
So, those marginal risk days, if that.
If that.
Yeah.
That's the value, the stuff that you saw, Mike, that we were developing in the hazardous weather test bed. That stuff, I think its greatest use is in marginal days. When you have something that's high confidence, it's fish in a barrel for communicating, for making warning decisions. There's a decision to make when it's actually conditional. And if you have a tool that can help you suss out when something is actually turning a little bit, and when it's more likely than baseline, then you have more to go off of. Because you're right, if you were just to tell everybody to go in every single day, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose everybody. It's a tough problem.
And a lot of things also, Kim, is that, most lightning days are not under any SPC outlooks at all because it's not considered severe. So it's really the June, July, and August is the 3-month period where it's typically, the lightning season here. And of course, we can get it at every month out of the year. But, the slight risk and marginal and all the outlooks are really meant for severe thunderstorm wind and tornado potential versus lightning. And you look at what people are typically doing when they are struck by lightning. A lot of people think the number one is, golfers, and it's really fishing. The most people that are killed are people that are fishing, people that are at the beach. That's been over the past 10 to 15 years. Of course, golfing is up there. Soccer is another high fatality sport that we've seen. That's across the country. That's not just in Florida. But like I talked about earlier with the sea breezes, the West Coast sea breeze, East Coast sea breeze, all you need is that cumulonimbus cloud to get that first strike, and yeah, a lot of fatalities can happen.
What do you all think about lightning? Sorry, James, I'll ask this last question and pass it back to you. But what do you all think about lightning not being included in any definition of severe?
The weather office in Melbourne actually prototyped issuing lightning alerts, and it was because of their collaboration with NASA during the space shuttle program in the 90s. And they had what was called an applied meteorology unit that was working with NASA, Kennedy Space Center. And because in order for the shuttle to go up, or even for Artemis to go up, that we just saw last week, there can't be lightning within a certain radius of Kennedy Space Center and the launch pad. And so they were developing tools for lightning forecasting. And that obviously the technology has really increased over the years, where you're looking at, even think about, composite reflectivity. You look at VIL, there's a lot of old school rules of thumb where it comes to radar meteorology and forecasting lightning, but then multi-radar, multi-sensor. Then you're look at satellite data with the GLM. So the geo lightning mapper, which really, again, helps us look at the potential and where lightning strikes are occurring. But then we start looking at, and I think this is what you're talking about with the hazardous weather test bed, where you're looking at the probability of the first lightning strike. And that is something that Tampa and Melbourne and Florida Institute of Technology, FIT, over in central part of Florida, were doing some research to see, okay, how can we better provide a service when it comes to the probability of the first strike?
That's awesome. And I'll pass it off to you, Span, but I will say that first strike is the toughest problem. Because after you've got some lightning, then people do go inside. And that's a similar problem in your convective regime, where you've got a lot of that summertime convection that's moving slowly and it's not tied to a synoptic, event. It's also true here when we get anvil lightning. So that first strike out ahead is deadly, and it is very important to capture. Off to you, Haas.
All right, so let's talk about how people get weather information in Tampa Bay, how they get information specifically involving high impact events, hurricanes, whatever. So I just poked around here. The National Hurricane Center, how many Facebook followers do you think they have? Anybody here know? And don't cheat. Don't look. 2.3 million. 2.3 million, an incredible number. And they do an amazing job with communication. But that is not the most followed Facebook page in Florida weather. Does anybody know what is the most followed Facebook page in Florida weather? Anybody?
Ryan Hall.
Something.
Mike.
No.
Clay.
Mike. No. Mike.
Well, Mike's, I'm sure, in the top 3. But the most followed weather page in Florida is something called Mike's Weather Page. Have you guys ever heard of this guy? Who is he, and why does he has 2.4 million? Who is he, and why does he have 2.4 million? And do you include him in integrated warning team meetings?
I never have, but he is in Pinellas County here, right on the coast of Florida. I think he started his whole endeavor with showing spaghetti plots during the 04 hurricane season, and being able to plot out what we can, all of our vendors can do now, but being able to plot that out and people wanting to see them, which can cause problems in itself.
Yeah, Mike Boylan, a great guy. I mean, he runs Mike's Weather Page. He's done it for years, and he has a strong relationship with us, the National Weather Service, and he's been at the hurricane conferences that we go to every single year. He has his own booth. He won one year. He won an award, Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference Award. I used to be on the board of directors with the Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference, and Mike won the award of the year for public messaging. So very significant. And I think I know WeatherBrains has had many digital meteorologists, across the country, and folks that are really amplifying the information from National Weather Service. And so you look at people like Mike, and there's so many now. I think Mike was one of the early ones that came out, a decade or two ago, and really helping get the information out to the people that need it. And like you said, James, I mean, even the National Weather Service Tampa page, I mean, we're not up to 1 million. I think we're, what are we, like 50 or 60,000 by now for followers on Facebook. And you look at that, but Mike and many others will take that information, put it out there to their followers, and actually add value by amplifying it. So really, really great guy with Mike.
So he's responsible. So here's the next question. What do you do about these jamokes that are not responsible? And they have 1 million Facebook followers, and they're constantly, nonstop, posting 384-hour GFS maps, deterministic maps showing a hurricane landfall at Tampa Bay. It will be viewed and shared millions of times. Do you have that problem there? Because we sure do up here on the Central Gulf Coast.
We
Yeah, I
do.
think I think a lot of people have realized that some of that is not correct, and after you cry wolf so many times, it people tend to come back to the local people that have experience, and that we live here, and so we're not going to go off and say things because we have to face people at the grocery store too. We live right here, so I think a lot of the local people tend to be more measured.
Yeah, we with the National Weather Service, and even I do it in the consulting for Inspire Weather, is really going out there and helping people understand that, hey, you have to find a credible source. Okay, because with social media, there's so many, like you said, James, with the farthest GFS output, 384 hours, and they're showing the hurricane that inevitably either hits Tampa or New Orleans. It's usually one of the two, and then it goes to Texas, and it comes back to Florida, and then it disappears on the next run. But we always have a lot of damage control that would be done, and so on social media, I remember we would have these templates. A lot of coastal National Weather Service office would have them, the graphics of showing, okay, make sure that you have your trusted source. That may be the TV broadcast meteorologist, it may be the emergency manager, it may be the National Weather Service. Those are the three people that you really should be listening to. And for a lot of digital meteorologists, like we said with Mike from Mike's weather page, they take the official information and they put a very bright spotlight on it. But like I said, there's others that will just put out a lot of simulated hyping for fear and for clicks. And that becomes very damaging because it breaks the trust between the public and meteorology community in general. And so it really forces the National Weather Service and media meteorologists like Mike to really have to get out there earlier than normal. I remember Hurricane Irma 2017, we were starting briefings when Irma was still east of Puerto Rico. So think about that for a second. That is several days to greater than a week in advance before it comes to Florida. But we had to because social media was going crazy with where is this storm going to go? And we wanted to make sure people didn't let their guard down because it did have a high chance of coming to Florida. And some were showing the shift, going farther westward.
Well, and I think people that listen to this show, they know how to find a reliable source. They're weather dweebs. This is not for Joe Q Public, but for those that listen to this show, please, here we are in April. Please talk to your friends about finding a reliable source of information. It's stunning what the lunacy, Uncle Joe's hurricane page of doom and what they're doing. Some of these guys are making over $100,000-$200,000 a year posting bogus information. And what they do, they run it through AI, and they get these cute, doomsday statements when they post their 384-hour deterministic model maps, and it goes like wildfire, and they make piles of money doing that. And that's their motivation factor. And the one thing that we've got to watch in the weather enterprise, and we've discussed this in Houston at AMS, is how some professional meteorologists have gotten sucked into this. They're starting to make a lot of money on social media, and they're learning that one good post showing a hurricane landfall at Tampa Bay in 2 weeks could generate over $2,000. One post. And I'm telling you, if you're doing that, you've sold your soul. You're rotten. You're no good. You need to stop and get out of it. And I'm hoping, and I don't like being a policeman. I don't like the whole comment of that, the thought of that, but we have to control that within the weather enterprise. But again, my plead for all of you is to help your friends find a reliable source of information. Mike, you're on the socials, right? You're on the Twitter, Talk, Graham, all that stuff.
We had a very interesting situation here because we are owned by the cable company. And when all of that started, they told us that our business model is different and they don't care about it. And so everything that we do has never been forced on us by the corporation because that's just not what we're into in this company. And so that probably keeps our numbers down. We don't have the fancy post, but we tend to treat it with a little bit more dignity and measure than some people that are being really pushed by the company that owns them to get the numbers up. So it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah, go follow Mike. Go follow Mike and go follow Brian and just find reliable sources and help people to find them. And every year it's an increasing problem every year. Exponentially, it's becoming a problem. People have canceled vacations. They have canceled elective surgery because they saw some bonehead, some jamoke who posted a 2-week hurricane landfall at Mobile Bay. And they thought, oh man, this has got 1 million views. This has got to be real. Or they get on TikTok, and that's the worst. I'm telling you, this summer when you turn on TikTok, the first thing you're going to see, it's either somebody dancing, somebody cussing, somebody that's being funny, or somebody showing a hurricane landfall in 2 weeks. I guarantee you, that's what you're going to see. So please help your friends find a reliable source. And on that note, we've got to take a quick break. And Mike and Brian, we're fair warning, we're going to come to you guys for picks of the week here shortly. But before we do that, we're going to hear from Tony Rice. Needless to say, this is a big week for Tony in his astronomy report. We're going to hear from Jen this week in tornado history. We'll hit a couple of emails. We'll come back with picks of the week and more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
As this episode of WeatherBrains airs, the crew of Artemis 2 is wrapping up their flyby, and nearly 7 hours of lunar observations, including laying eyes on parts of the moon's surface never before seen by human eyes. Along the way, they also managed to set a record for the furthest any human has traveled from Earth, beating the Apollo 13 crew by about 4,100 miles. I got to experience the launch last Wednesday from the Kennedy Space Center press site, alongside a few hundred journalists from around the world. Weather couldn't have been much better. I'm sure there was some wind and brief sprinkling of rain in the afternoon, but I'm told this is a very common cycle for Central Florida. Sea breeze-driven clouds spinning up in the morning, dropping a little precip in the afternoon, and clearing out at least over the coast as the afternoon turns into evening. Skies were so clear to the east come launch time at 6:35 that we could see and hear the rocket for at least 4 minutes after it left the pad, literally halfway to space. But the two things that I'll remember most about this launch are how bright the flame was coming out of the business end of that 13-story Space Launch System rocket. No video can ever really do justice to just how bright that is. And the sound. SLS is loud, really loud. Only the Saturn V was louder, and only by about 5%. And I've seen a couple of shuttle launches, and SLS is about twice as loud. This isn't just perception, there's numbers to back it up. Researchers from BYU in Utah and Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, placed microphones around the Artemis 1 launch pad back in November of 22. They found that sound levels reached 136 decibels from a mile away. That's like standing in the end zone of a football field and listening to a sustained jet engine in the other end zone, well beyond the pain threshold. Additional measuring stations were placed at 2.1 and 3.2 miles away, near the VIP viewing stands. From there, 129 decibels were recorded. My much less sophisticated iPhone app recorded some similar levels at the press site, 3.4 miles away. That's a similar noise level to a nearby chainsaw. This research was published in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America. It also noted that much of the sound is concentrated around 20 hertz, near the lower limit of human hearing. That's where the rumble comes from. You don't just see or hear the launch of a heavy lift rocket like this, you feel it. The other very memorable thing about the sound of rocket launches like this is the crackle.
Communication signal transfer confirmed as integrity and its crew go supersonic.
That comes from tiny shock waves that form and collapse in the supersonic exhaust flume as it moves through the stiller air around it. And these shock waves are something that engineers have to account for in designing the rocket and its launch pad. If you watch the launch, or any shuttle launch for that matter, you'll notice a cloud of white smoke that billows up around the base of the engines as they ignite. But that's not smoke, it's steam, from nearly 500 million gallons of water being dumped on the launch pad, through giant nozzles that the engineers lovingly refer to as rainbirds. Now, it does have a bit of a cooling effect, converting some of that heat energy into steam, but the primary purpose of the water deluge system is acoustic. Without it, the sound of the rocket would reflect back and possibly shake the vehicle apart. Next up for the astronauts is more demonstrations of technology and processes aboard the new Orion capsule before splashing down off the coast of San Diego on Friday. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, the Red River Valley tornado outbreak was one of the most significant outbreaks on record for this region. It occurred on April 10th, 1979. Per the Storm Prediction Center, 25 tornadoes occurred mainly in Texas and Oklahoma, with one lone tornado in the state of Kansas. 2 F4 tornadoes occurred during the outbreak. One hit the south side of Vernon, Texas, and the other struck Wichita Falls. The Wichita Falls tornado had a path length of almost 47 miles. It had a maximum width of close to 1 mile, and it reached that mile width as it entered the Faith Village neighborhood on the north side of Southwest Parkway. Most of the homes in this area were demolished. Tragically, 42 people lost their lives from this tornado event. 25 of the deaths were auto-related, and 16 of the 25 were people who entered their cars trying to evade the tornado. 11 of these 16 people left homes that were not even damaged. A total of 3,095 homes were destroyed in this event, and 600 were damaged. Over 1,700 injuries were reported. Ted Fujita surveyed the damage from this outbreak, and per the National Weather Service in Norman, he noted that the damage path of the Wichita Falls tornado was among the widest that he had ever seen. You can read about this event and hundreds more at tornadotalk.com.
All right, time to dig into the good old email inbox. See what's in there this week.
All righty. I have a few emails sitting here for the past couple of weeks, and the first one is from Katie. I wanted to ask your thoughts on something that has been bothering me. Some storm chasers online are posting videos joking about things like, how long will my windshield last? After driving into hail cores, the content makes it look like getting as close as possible to severe storms as part of the entertainment. And so her concern is that the younger viewers who are watching these videos who may think this kind of behavior is normal and try to copy it. So she wanted us to kind of have a small discussion about our thoughts on storm chasing, how it's being portrayed online, and how can we encourage a safer example for the next generation.
Ooh.
I don't know who else here has chased. I can't say it present tense since I started to have kids. That part of my life is apparently not over, but it's at least paused. Although what's happening right now, I do not want to be part of any of these goings on. This is just, it's absurd. But yeah, I can tell you, as someone I was like the safety officer on the chases that I would go on, you can have a beautiful experience. And it's actually sometimes more breathtaking to be back further from the storm because you get the full environment, you get the feeling of the inflow when you position yourself correctly. You can lean back into the wind and feel supported. And there's nothing more magical than this, I don't think. And there's some really well-regarded photographers, storm photographers, who this is their entire MO. And they do chase tours that and keep you in the near storm environment, but they do not go into the bear's cage. Like, you don't have to. And sometimes when you're in it, it's terrible. Like, it's if anything goes high precip, you can't see a thing. You get this very odd selection of storms where you see people put up their trophy storms on the internet. And that's one of 1,000 chases, that you're going to get something that looks like that. There's no reason to do this. And right now, I completely discourage people from trying to get close because of the traffic. It is more lethal to chase today. I mean, it is a disaster, just an absolute disaster waiting to happen. Every storm season, I hold my breath because I'm horrified for what could happen. And there's no necessity. There's really not. You get a beautiful experience, sometimes even better. And in fact, most of the time, even better when you can see the full structure of the storm, because that is the show. Just my 2 cents.
That 100%. I think you get the majesty of nature when you see the entire picture.
It reminds me of when I was in Lubbock, so the National Weather Service in Lubbock, and there's a chase team out there called the South Plains Storm Spotting Team. And so I used to work with them from the National Weather Service side, and we would have these really elaborate, really technical training sessions. And I'm talking like usually if you've gone to those Skywarn training days, you're like an hour and a half at most National Weather Service offices. Sometimes they could be even shorter and be virtual these days. But back in Lubbock, when we would work with that chase group, it was 6 hours. So we were in a room, it was like a workshop. We were calculating CAPE by hand. We were doing this manual skew T plotting. because they were wanting to do it safely, like what you mentioned, Kim and James. And so the training material that I would provide would be, okay, how can you position yourself based on visual cues with storm structure? Be in the, if you're on the inflow side versus the rear flank side, and what can you see? You don't want to go a certain, direction to be trapped, and also the awareness of roadways, because as you mentioned and alluded to, Kim, I mean, there's some folks out there that, put their lives in danger and the lives of other people in danger when they get trapped by these horrific storm systems. So again, safety is key, and really enjoying it, because you'll get a greater understanding of meteorology by truly seeing the storm structure, seeing the inflow, seeing the rear flank downdraft, seeing the forward flank downdraft, seeing the cumulonimbus from afar, and then that rare treat of, okay, hopefully you're not outside the van when it happens, but the lightning strike or hail that may be seen off in the distance, the hail shaft. There's a lot of wonderful features that you can see meteorologically without putting your life in danger.
That is amazing, and I'm just going to say, and hopefully I can say this. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to sneak this out yet, because I don't 100% sure know what's happening. But I'm possibly going chasing for really the first time. I hope, with Mark Suddeth, and he is going to go out, and we want to do it this way. He wants to do everything differently, and he actually wants me to come along and be a history piece. As we're traveling and kind of talking through things, and we're going through Kansas or we're going through Nebraska or whatever, and we can talk about the history. I'm really excited about it. I'm nervous. I've only chased once, and this was almost 10 years ago. But to do a big chase where that's all I'm doing, but we want to do it a different way. We don't want to be a Yahoo. We want to be safe. So I think it's up to us as a weather enterprise to set the right example for the next generation. We need to do it and do things differently, and show the beauty of nature and learn about it in the right way.
You're not going to be a jamoke. You're not going to be a
That's right.
jamoke.
Don't be a jamoke.
That's right. I'm not going to be a genmoke. So I'm not doing it. I'm going to cut the email there, and I want to quickly go to our next 3 episodes. John Gordon has been just going to town here. I think he has booked the next 500 episodes, but we're going to make it 3.
Yeah, all right. So
what's happening?
What a great show tonight, right? Tampa Bay, Mike and Brian, and now we got a Colorado show next week. The state climatologist, Russ Schumacher, and the Coco Ross. Some people, James Aildot will say Coco Puffs, but the Coco Ross people will be on next week. So if you have questions, want to be an observer, whatever, Bill Reed is just funny. I mean, he's right, James. He is
very, very funny man. He's a very funny man.
He really is. And then we got an author who just he's been on WeatherBrains before, Wayne Neely. He's got a new book about the Great Bahamas Hurricane of 1733. Is that right, Jen? I get that right?
1933. Yeah.
1930. I knew I'd get it wrong. So anyway, what's that email, Jen? What did we go to?
It is email@weatherbrains.com. And if you send in your questions, just put your first name if you want to, and put what city you're coming from. We like to know where are our listeners, where are they coming in from, and we would like to get your show suggestions too. And that you think that James Aildot is hilarious. Whatever you want to do here, send us all those comments. We would appreciate it. Email@weatherbrains.com.
Let's go to Picks of the Week. Everybody's going to share something fun, interesting, weather-related. My pick, I'll just say up front here, the CPC Climate Prediction Center today issued a new document on ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, recent evolution, current status, and predictions, released today. A very interesting paper, since we've talked about it on the show tonight. It's what it means for the hurricane season. It's good stuff. Now, it's 31 pages, okay? It's 31 pages, but I'm just saying, if you're interested in more about ENSO and where we're going, check it out. The link will be on weatherbrains.com. Let's go to James Aildot. We got to get him in because he's getting set for the 9 o'clock news. James, what you got?
I'm going to pass to Kim, and then she can bounce right back to me. She's got kid issues.
Oh.
I've got the SOS.
Sorry.
I've got the SOS. No, it's good. So my pick of the week is an article just talking about the astronauts on the Artemis 2 mission they've come back around from the far side of the moon, which is distinct from the dark side of the moon. There's been some some folks in our community feel very strongly these things are being used interchangeably and they are distinct. Google it for yourself if you'd like to understand the difference. But it's the far side of the moon, and it's just pretty wonderful. Wanted to share that for my pick.
Excellent. Again, all these picks will be up on weatherbrains.com. And again, thanks to Tony Rice for his report. He got to see the launch, and we saw Tony, Kim, and John in Mobile when he was on the way to the Cape to watch the launch. But Tony's report was just great tonight. Okay, James, go. You're up.
All right, mine is this afternoon. I think it was this afternoon when the astronauts noticed an unnamed feature on the moon and in tribute wanted to name it after Mission Commander Reed Wiseman's late wife. And I thought that was really heartwarming and touching, and it's a neat video clip.
Excellent. We'll put it up on weatherbrains.com. Troy Kimmel, your pick of the week.
Foghorn, please. Spin one of those.
Oh, let's blow the foghorn. Ooh, I loved it. I love the sound of that thing. We all get the foghorn from time to time. All right, Jen, what's your pick of the week? Go.
On X, I have just a couple of accounts that I get notified by, and one of them is from my chipmunk, Nelson Tucker. And he has been posting some amazing photos as of late. And the one that has just really gotten my attention here, I can't keep my eyes off of it, is the incredible barrel white wall cloud in mezzo, the large Morton, Texas EF2 tornado, as it intensified on June 5th, 2025. And he's kind of going back into the Otis season last year and posting. I think he's getting ready to go back out. And so he's kind of giving us a tease of what he may find here when they take Otis out this summer. And exciting to have them back on in November, right, John? We're going to have them. We had so many people asking questions about the Otis project.
Yep.
We're bringing them back, and we're just going to do rapid fire questions.
Like it a lot. All right, John Gordon, let's turn the floor over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Eagle. So real quick, it snowed again in Marquette. So we're getting closer to the second all-time greatest snowfall ever, Mike Clay. Marquette, it will not end. Pretty bizarre. But anyway, my pick of the week also comes from Michigan. It's warmer in southern Michigan. And what does that mean with all that snow? Yes, we have major and moderate flooding. So Jaden Pappenheim Weather on X and Michigan Storm Chasers have some amazing flood pictures, and people are really hurting. I mean, these rivers are there's a lot of snow to melt up there. A lot of snow. None for you, Mike Clay. Thanks, Eagle.
All right. Speaking of Mike, give us a pick of the week. Give us something good.
All right. If you're interested in the Florida rainy season we're talking about, weather.gov/TBW/rainy season. And it has all the climatology on there from the Ruskin office about the patterns and our rainy season, and great write-up if you'd like to know more about Florida weather and the things we deal with down here. Also, you can do weather.gov TBW thunderstorm climatology is another one that's really good. So learn more about Florida weather.
And for those of you that are driving and listening, we'll have all of these links up on weatherbrains.com for you. Okie doke. Let's see, Brian, you're up. Give us something good.
All right, thanks, James. And I'm glad Mike brought that up. Love that page. Use it all the time. For my pick of the week, it's going to be, we talked a lot about El Nino and La Nina today. So I want everyone to go and learn more about a certain type of El Nino that is rare called El Nino Modokai. And that's Japanese for similar but different. It actually happens over the Central Pacific, where the traditional El Nino is the warming over the Eastern Pacific. And this El Nino Modokai has happened several times in the past, but it can actually increase the number of hurricanes in the Atlantic.
Awesome. Again, it'll be up on weatherbrains.com. And I wanted to mention, too, before we wrap it up, Roy Leap was actually on this show on WeatherBrains. I can't remember exactly what year, but I will have JP throw that link up on WeatherBrains as well, because Roy, of course, was he kind of paved the way for Mike and everybody else for what he did back in the 50s and 60s. But Mike, anything you need to promote? Go. Any social media accounts, TV, whatever.
I would just say
your promotion moment.
Our website, baynews9.com /weather. We put a lot of tropical things there. When the tropics start, we move that up, and we have a lot of graphics, not only for Florida, but for the Caribbean. So we build all that ourselves, and we annotate things. If the meteorologist sees something that they would like to add to the graphic, we do that by hand. and locally, and we use our expertise on those graphics. So keep an eye on those in hurricane season.
And that is a credible source of information. Brian, anything you need to promote? Go.
No, definitely. I run the Inspire Weather on my personal accounts. So Brian Lamar on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I'll post a lot of educational meteorology and sometimes current forecasting.
Outstanding. Well, it's been a great show. For those of you that are new here, we're typically on the air every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, and we stream it live on YouTube. Most of you listen later to the audio version. If you watch, if you listen, thank you. And if you want to get in touch with us, you know the deal, you know the deal. The email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. A question about anything we've talked about tonight, show suggestions, topics, whatever. Let us hear from you. But we got to wrap this one up. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. God bless. Great show tonight. This is a
Great
good
show,
one.
guys.
Thank you, Brian.
Outstanding.
Mike,
Thanks to both of you for your time. Yeah, thank you guys so much. I know it took a lot of time. Thank you.
James, John, Troy, good to see you guys again.
Good to see you, Mike. You rock.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
You guys were great.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.